course. Hello, and thank you for having me at the Funeraire Academie and Tilburg University webinar. My name is Stefanie Neuenschwander, and I am a PhD student at the University of Zurich. And I am part of the research team that started the Churches Online in Times of Corona study, or CONTOC for short. We did this international and ecumenical study project on digital practices of churches in spring of 2020. I am very honored to present you with some insights of our CONTOC study in the field of digital ritualization and hope to benefit the discussion in ritual studies. But first, I want to focus on the limitations that our CONTOC study has concerning ritual studies. Our study intensively addressed international and ecumenical issues, and therefore organizational and question-specific decisions had to be made. Because of the research interest in change of role, we designed the questions for pastors and ministers. Knowing fully well, of course, these are not the only people that drive digital innovation and organize it. Our research actually shows that a great many people and groups are actively involved in digital practices in churches. But when it comes to ritual studies, our results are mostly from the producer's perspective. And we can't say anything about the participants or their experience of worship services and counseling or rituals. When it comes to the participants' experience, the wishes for digital rituals, in the German context there are studies like Reteog or MIDI that will give you more of an input. When it comes to the producer's perspective, or in this case the pastors and ministers that we asked, we see in CONTOC that their attitude towards using digital media plays a significant role. Whether pastors see the use of digital technology as risky or find it more of opportunities for new and innovative church development is important. In our questions on pastoral care, we see that there are 5 types or profiles during that time in the corona pandemic. There were the inactives, which mostly reported to have no or seldom experience of pastoral care or spiritual guidance during that time. The second type are the pastors that focused their counseling on phone conversations. This is actually the largest group in German and Swiss data. A third type could be called the all-round actives, which consist of people using multiple devices and platforms for counseling or spiritual care. A fourth type focused on group settings for pastoral care or group activities online. And the fifth and very last are the very active type of pastors and ministers that in all categories are above average users. What we found in our study is that the more active people also had the better experience and found their role as pastors and ministers less compromised because of the provisions that were put on society and social life. We see in the graph that actually the very active group of pastors had the highest percentage, so about 20%, that thought of themselves as fulfilling the role in pastoral care in these challenging times. Only 35% of them thought that they weren't up to the task. Whereas on the other spectrum, we see that 57% of the inactives were unsure about their role in pastoral care and their practices of spiritual guidance during that period. So the ones that did not try digital formats or weren't equipped to do so had more doubts and questions about their capability to do spiritual care for the community and congregation during that time. And we see similar responses when we look at the worship questions that we posed to pastors and ministers. The pastors that were keen to try out new digital forms and tried more frequently to have online worship formats than others had actually the better experience and had less questions about their role as liturgists in these forms. So the more pastors and ministers or producers of digital formats in worship and spiritual care try out using digital technology, the better they feel equipped and the more assured they are that actually digital media can and or should be used for that purpose. In our study, we saw that the attitude towards the use of digital media for spiritual care, for worship services, and therefore also for grief counselling or online funerals differ. We see ministers that say there is a lot of possibility and deep connection with one another online, and they therefore also see opportunities for grief counselling or death rituals. Quote, digital communication can be very personal and create a deep connection. But we also find skeptics within ministers. They find that online counselling and the connection with one another is lacking online. They prefer face-to-face meetings and rituals that can, in their minds, join community better. Quote, the feeling of community must be revived and newly explored. Digital media can't fulfill that experience and is therefore no substitute. There should be a mix of both. So far from the CONTOC study. Thanks for listening.